Anyway, I'll just head off. So Hierapolis is an interesting case study because of just about any other cities that we have in Asia Minor and Turkey today. We can see the transformation of a pagan city to a Christian one very well in Hierapolis. Not only do we have textual sources, but we have a lot of archaeological evidence. So this is what I would like to share with you today in my presentation as we look at this transformation. Along the way, we want to look at some of the other recent finds and publications that have come out from Hierapolis. It's a very active excavation along with publications. And so we've got a lot to cover in the next 45 minutes. First of all, though, I'd like to mention the Global Smyrna meeting that's coming up in June that Tutku Tours is sponsoring. There will be aspects of this meeting that will be open to the public free of charge. So please mark these on your calendar, those of you who are in and around Izmir at this time. Monday morning, June 21st, there'll be the opening ceremonies with a couple lead lectures from Turhan Kaçar and Dana Harris. And then on Wednesday, the 23rd, you can see the full lineup where each of the 7 churches plus Patmos will be discussed by various scholars. Many of you are familiar with, many are on this Zoom call right now. And so this will be a part of the Global Smyrna meeting coming up, and we invite all of you to participate. More information on this is on the Tutku Tours website. So just to refresh your memory, where Hierapolis is located there, inland about 100 miles, 160 kilometers from Ephesus, on the major road running east-west across Turkey next to Laodicea and Hierapolis. So here is a map from William Ramsey's book showing the 3 cities of the Lycus River Valley: Hierapolis, Laodicea, and Colossae. And the only text in the New Testament that mentions Hierapolis is in Colossians 4:13. And Paul is writing to the church there, and he's telling them that Epaphras, who's representing the church in Rome, is there. He's working hard for you and for those in Laodicea and in Hierapolis. So the mention of Hierapolis in the book of Colossians. Certainly the church there would have been part of the audience for the letter to Laodicea in the 7 churches of Revelation as well, because that certainly had a circular aspect as well. So the city plan of Hierapolis, you're all familiar with. There's big boards at each entrance, fully illustrated, by showing a little bit later a period about contemporary with this one. And one of the publications that's come out recently, and these are all published by A.A. Yayalara in Istanbul, is an atlas of Hierapolis. And they have many of the maps that are adapted and used by the excavators and others. So this is the publication 2015. So the temple sanctuary of Apollo, Temple A, we'll begin with. This was an important oracle sanctuary inland. It was probably a secondary sanctuary with Didyma and Claros being more primary. But the Apollo sanctuary was quite noted in Hierapolis, mentioned by Strabo. And so there's a inscription carved on the blocks here in the corner, a stone from the other side, and you can see to Apollo there, that a dedicatory inscription from the demos of the city of Hierapolis. So Hierapolis noted for its Apollo sanctuary. We have 2 parts of this sanctuary here. Temple A that we have in front of us, and this was situated right over to the top of the important seismic fault. And similar to what you have at Delphi, the seismic fault here played a major role in the situating of the temple. And there was a Bothros, a place for sacrifices, right in the center of this temple that they used. So the archaeologists have traced various phases to this: Hellenistic phase, this is an Augustan phase, and then later a Severan phase in the 3rd century. And if you look to the right of the temple there, you can see a round structure called a monopteros. And this is literally where the oracle of Apollo Kyrios was located, again, situated right above the seismic fault there on temple, next to Temple A. So for those of us who have been going to Hierapolis for many years, you remember the sign that used to be next to this as the entrance to the Plutonium. Well, of course, that's all changed now, but the entrance here is probably very close to that seismic fault that the oracle was situated over, that provided the means for the oracle to function. Now, sitting backward from Temple A there is Temple B, and this was also dating from the 1st century and was used as the main cult building for the priests and others that were there. Very little is remaining of Temple B right now. And we know from archival sources that Justinian had sent John of Ephesus throughout Western Asia Minor, destroying pagan shrines. And so this particular Temple B was virtually totally destroyed in 542. And so today, and then later on, the major pilgrimage way that led up to the sanctuary of Philip began here near the remains of what is Temple B. So very little remaining now. Now, another Apollo temple that was nearby that I had the opportunity this last year to visit for the first time was the temple to Apollo Lerbanos, which is northeast of Hierapolis. And this is the sign at the site. A few of you have visited this, but it's very remote, and so a lot of folks don't get there. I'll show you a picture in just a minute. But this is quite an interesting Apollo temple that is, we call it extramural. It's outside of the city of Hierapolis, but it's probably the most spectacularly situated temple that I've seen in Turkey. You can see the Meander River down below as it's flowing to the west. This is facing west. Sits up on a high promontory, so it's a bit difficult to drive to. A big bus probably can't get to it, but you can certainly get it to the site with a minivan or automobile, which we had. So this is the remains of the temple and the temenos. Here we're looking to the northeast. You can see because there's a dam below. In the previous picture, going west, you can see water backed up. Here's the meander looking toward the northeast, basically toward Uşak in this direction. Number of inscriptions have been found at this temple, and in publications more recently related to these inscriptions that are quite interesting. Now, for those of you who would like to go, here's a map showing how you get there. You literally just drive over the top from Pamukkale, the south gate, follow this road all the way up to Bahadinlar, the village there, and you turn through rich grape fields down to the river. And so along the way, we discovered this wonderful alabalik restaurant place at Aliyan Kaya Yeşildere Şelalesi. So beautiful place there at Sakız Jalar, just next to Karakaya, where the red dot is. So, and plus you can do some wine tasting. So Chal is quite famous for its various wineries in the area. So you can easily do this in a half hour. So it's a nice trip out from Pamukkale and Hierapolis sometime in your when you're there. And this particular temple then was brought into for Hierapolis became its caretaker in this 2nd century. It became its Neocorus. And so within now Hierapolis, there were 2 Apollo temples functioning. So 2013, many of you know Francesco D'Andrea, the now retired head excavator at Hierapolis, as they just had discovered the plutonium here in Hierapolis, and we got a early tour of the work going on there. Now, unfortunately today, and this has been going on now for I think about 2 years, this is still fenced off where you can't get access to it. I was able to get into this area in August. I'll mention why in just a minute. But just to give you an idea that it's really all ready for visitors to come in. They have very nice walkways that you can see from the distance, as well as the signage is all up. And you can see again that the plutonium is situated over the seismic fault, just like the Apollo temple. And you can see the pins there showing where the seismic fault is, and then the damage that's been caused by subsequent earthquakes. So here's the restoration as it looks like today there. And still coming out from the entrance there is the gas, carbon dioxide gas in the bubbles in the water. So here's photographs. So the displays are really quite nice that they've erected here with the inscription over the entrance, mentioning in Greek the plutonium and also the dedication to Kore. Nearby, constructed in the 1st century, was this theatron, so that spectators numbering around 800 could gather around there and watch the priests do the sacrificial rituals there. You see a recreation of the painting there in the lower left. And so in the museum, you have, of course, this well-preserved statue of Hades, Greek name for Pluto, a god of the underworld. They've re-erected a copy here at the site now, and showing this tholos structure that was also present in this whole complex. So the plutonium was quite an extensive complex with the pool, the theater, the tholos, etc. Around it. And here's another view of the tholos here again from the 1st century. And in this area then, it suggests that there was therapeutic and ritual purification taking place here at the tholos. So as I mentioned, I was in the area in August, part of a filming for a Science Channel production of Unearthed called Rome's Gate to Hell. So if you take this information and plug it into a search engine, it will pull up the link, and you can watch this on YouTube. It's quite an interesting production that they did on the plutonium and on Hierapolis. So these are the 2 folks from Windfall Films, Bella and Ben, that I worked with on this. Extremely hot, it was about 35, 40 degrees in August in Hierapolis, as you can imagine, but the production turned out very well. And incidentally, they also did it while they were in Turkey, another production on Gordium and Phrygia. So that episode of Unearthed is also available online through YouTube, so you can check those out. Now, something I wanted to mention to you, because most of you probably have not seen this, but this is the only Greek bath that I know of in Turkey today. Notice the difference in style from the Roman baths that we have at so many different sites. This is an oval one. Now, where it is in Karahayat, you can see up in the upper left the Hierapolis Thermal Hotel there. So most all of you know where the Doha Thermal is, and as you are driving in from Karahayat, instead of turning off to the right to the Doha Thermal, continue straight. On the left, you got a traditional Roman bath, but if you go to the end of the street and park next to the Hierapolis Thermal and walk over the hill, this is where it is. I stumbled upon it several years ago. And it really is quite spectacular and well preserved. The only other one I know of is in the Agora at Thessaloniki, and that is not well preserved at all. Here's another view of it from a closer view, and they've done a very nice job. The interior of this Greek bath, and then another view from the south. So it's quite a complex, and again, very different than any other type of bath complex, either in Hierapolis or in any other Roman cities that we have in Asia Minor. So something maybe to check out the next time you're staying in Karahayat and take a look at it. So there's been a lot of work in the necropolises of Hierapolis in recent years. You can see one of the very famous tombs there of the Fullers with a balloon over the top. And I want to talk just a bit about some of the research in the necropolis that's been going on, headed up by Sven Arends, who is the archaeologist from the Norwegian Maritime Museum. And again, his articles are available on academia, and he has several. Okay, I'm getting some feedback here. Somebody. So check out Sven's articles, but summarizing some of the important conclusions that was many of it new information to me. They've identified 6 necropolis now in Hierapolis with 800 tomb buildings and some 2,000 sarcophagi. So this is, as you well know, Hierapolis noted for its necropolises. He's estimating from these necropolises that we have about 10 to 12,000 inhabitants for Hierapolis, about the size of Pompeii. And he's calculating 400 to 600 deaths annually. He says the city's burial capacity then would be holding about 170,000 burials in the first 3 to 4 centuries AD in the city. So that's quite a considerable number. Another fact that I found was quite interesting, because normally when people say, well, where were slaves and common people buried? We suggested maybe it was just common graves that would be unmarked, but he is suggesting now that these tombs built by the wealthy would be places to bury the extended household, including freedmen and slaves. So whole households then would be buried in these tombs. And so, as we said, sufficient to bury the entire civic population in the necropolises of Hierapolis. And we're going to be looking at a tomb like Philip here in a bit, and it would cost about 1 to 2 years' wages to pay for a tomb like that, or pay for its construction. But once it was built, it could be used for centuries by a family. And then apparently, because we see some of these tombs in reuse, there was a market for used tombs, and he suggests probably would be selling at a cheaper price than building a new one. Now, a very interesting tomb that's received attention recently is in the North Necropolis. As you're walking on the Roman road into the city from the north entrance, just pointing this out so you know how to find it. You can see it there. It's right where the road makes the right turn toward the Frontinus Gate. And one of the inscriptions, it has 3 inscriptions on it, tells us some very important information. It says, the Heroon with the room situated below and the area all around it belongs to Aurelia Quadratilla, to Aurelius Marcellus, and to Aurelia Peronis, and to Aurelia, we're missing a name there, and Jewish. So this is belonging to a Jewish family. And so this is one of the interesting Jewish tombs that we have in the necropolises of Hierapolis. The second one is on the base, so this is facing the street. I had seen this menorah many years ago and had not seen a publication on it, so I didn't have any more information on the tomb. But you can see it's a typical 7-branched menorah, and just above it, you can see vaguely the Greek letters lambda, omicron, gamma there from eulogia, or blessing. And so that is located on that face. And Carolyn LaFlorest has published a 2-volume doctoral thesis in French on this, as well as an English publication. And she gives us some really interesting information on this tomb 163D. It was built in the 1st century AD and then sold to the Jewish family we just mentioned after 212. And then they provided this inscription on the tomb. The lower chamber and benches that were discovered in 2001 were packed with bones, and they've counted at least 293 people buried in this tomb. And so the deposits of bones range from 27 BC to 604, and they do that through carbon dating and other means. So it's quite extraordinary, over 600 years. The primary deposits show the chamber was not used as an ossuary, but deceased were brought into the chamber as newly dead corpses. And over 1,200 artifacts were found here, and just a listing from ceramics to glassware, coins, and all kinds of things. So really a fascinating discovery here in this Jewish tomb there in the North Necropolis. So again, Carolyn's work is definitely worthy to check out. Another tomb that is a Jewish tomb that's quite interesting is, again, it's reused on the face to the right, facing the road. The original owner's name has been scratched out, and we have the name of the new Jewish owner there etched on the sarcophagus on top. Now, the lower Marcus Aurelius Philomenus Strainino, and then down below, it's very difficult to see, usually because of the light, is that we actually have Jewish symbols of the menorah, lulog, and etrog there. Now, I was there one day when there was snow on the ground, and so I took snow and put it inside, rubbed it across the face, so there you can actually see those Jewish symbols with the menorah to the left of it, the etrog, and then the lulav to the right. So another interesting Jewish tomb in the North Necropolis. And a final tomb that I had been looking for a long time. I spent a day with Michael and Felicity Kimke looking for these Jewish tombs in August. Was this important sarcophagus with the inscription from Glykon. And you can see where it's located there, right across the bridge before the staircase going up to the Philip sanctuary. So once I knew it was there, it's quite easy to see. And we are not certain if the owner was Jewish, possibly a God-fearer, but he leaves money to the purple dyers that money is going to be given then for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is Passover. And he leaves 150 denarii to the carpet weavers in order that money can be given for the Festival of Pentecost. So two Jewish feasts mentioned prominently on this inscription related to Glykon. So again, a very famous inscription. And there you can see the sarcophagus in the foreground, just to the left of the bridge, just sitting there. So again, once you know it's there, it's easy to find. Some of the important Jewish tombs that we have. Now, moving on to Philip, the disciple apostle. In the New Testament, we see he's listed among the 12 disciples, and he's featured in 4 passages in the Gospel of John. In the book of Acts, he's present at Pentecost and at the Ascension, but then he largely disappears from the book of Acts. Tradition has it he travels to Asia, perhaps with John in the late 60s. And one of our issues that the church historian Eusebius confuses the 2 Philips of Acts. So some of the scholars, maybe some who are listening today, still think that the Philip of Hierapolis is actually the deacon or evangelist. Now, this Philip we see in the book of Acts, his home is at Caesarea Maritima. Now, the later apocryphal Acts of Philip, dating to the 4th century, preserve a tradition that it was the apostle then who was crucified upside down in Hierapolis. Now, our earliest Christian sources confirm that it was the apostle. The Bishop of Hierapolis, Papias, mentions in Eusebius's church history that Philip the apostle lived at Hierapolis with his daughters. And then at the end of the 1st century, the Bishop of Ephesus, Polycrates, is writing to the Bishop of Rome. And he says, among these are Philip, one of the 12 who fell asleep in Hierapolis, his 2 aged virgin daughters, and another daughter who lived in the Holy Spirit, now rests in Ephesus. So Papias and Polycrates, our 2 earliest sources, both say it was the apostle who lived there. And so the Italian archaeologists who have worked there have uniformly attributed this site or associated with Philip the apostle. So as we look at the monumentalization of Philip here in the city, as we're talking about this transformation now from the pagan city of Apollo and Pluto to Philip. These are the various phases that, again, Professor DeAndrea and the other archaeologists have delineated. First, we have the saddle-roofed house tomb that is repurposed, reused by the Christians. We have an inscription on the front of the tomb says Apollinarius, so perhaps he is the original owner. And now the Christians bury Philip in this tomb. So until Christianity is legalized, the tomb basically sits as it is. After Christianity is legalized in the early 4th century now, the tomb is enclosed by a rectangular building that sets it apart from the rest of the necropolis. So the tomb is literally sitting in the northeast necropolis. So because of threats during the time of Theodosius, city walls are built, and now the shrine, the tomb, and the necropolis are outside the city walls to the north. And so a bridge, a staircase, and a fountain are constructed to get up to the tomb. In the 5th century, we see a bathhouse constructed across the bridge at the base, and then a martyrium is constructed. And this martyrium burns down within a century. So the beautiful construction, the base that we still see there today, is gone within 100 years. A century later now, the basilica with the nave and 2 aisles is built around the tomb from spolia. So archaeologists have identified pieces of the Apollo temple, Plutonium, and other structures built into the basilica dedicated to Philip at the top. And another one of the projects that Aaron's has been doing is he's been looking at the various tombs near the tomb of Philip in the basilica. And I've identified at least 130 skeletons, probably related to pilgrims, that have pilgrimage items buried with them in the tomb, showing people have come from as far as France and Italy to Hierapolis to revere Philip. And we have evidence of pilgrimage going as late as the 12th century. Now, there are some traditions that Philip's relics were moved away from Hierapolis, possibly going into the Church of the Apostles in Rome, but it's unlikely that all of them were removed because why would pilgrims continue to come to Hierapolis if Philip's relics were all gone? And so with the Seljuk invasion of 1180, probably before this took place, we see Philip's relics being moved to Constantinople to the Church of the Holy Apostles. So this is all the phases then of the building of the various monuments related to Philip in the city. Now, one of the great resources that has become available in the last couple of years is Massimo Limoncelli's virtual Hierapolis. This is in English, and accompanying it is a CD-ROM. So some of these, or I mean, most all of these illustrations I'm showing you today have come from this volume, where they've recreated and restored all the major buildings in Hierapolis in quite an amazing job. So would recommend this. So here's a visualization showing you the city wall built in the 4th century, then the bridge and the beginning of the staircase built in the 5th century. Now we're looking up the hill with the bathhouse to the left across the bridge, and of course the martyrium above, and then of course it would have to be in the 6th century with the church on the top, the basilica to the right. Now, one of the amazing things that has been found is this bread stamp that's now in the Richmond Museum of Fine Art. I've seen it myself when I was in Virginia, dating from the 5th century. And the reason we can suggest that is, notice that on the left side, there is no basilica, there is no church yet. Now, this stamp was probably used to impress bread that was given to pilgrims who came to the pilgrimage to the sanctuary of Philip. So note that everything is in reverse. So all the lettering and the imagery is literally reverse backwards. So if you press that in the bread, it'd be the right side. So around Philip's, the image of Philip there, it says Hagios Philippos, And again, the Greek is backwards. And then around the edge there, we have the quotation of Isaiah 6:3, holy, 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 Lord Sabaoth, heaven and earth are full of your glory. So notice we have two staircases there linking to different monuments. And then the martyrium is on the left with the dome. So when this red stamp was made, the martyrium had not burned down yet. And then on the left side was the canopy, or the technical name ciborium, that would be over Philip's tomb. So this is very similar to the ciborium we see with the post still over John's tomb in Ephesus. You also see this in the tomb of Demetrius in Thessaloniki today. There's still a ciborium in that church. But so this is a very important bread stamp showing us these architectural structures that were in Hierapolis here in the 5th century. So this is what remains of the martyrium today. Most all of you have visited this and seen this structure. Until the basilica was discovered, it was believed that this is where Philip was buried as well. And then amazingly, the church was discovered. So this is from an article in Biblical Archaeology Review in about 2013. That again, Professor DeAndrea is still suggesting here, notice the star in the middle of the presumed site of Philip's tomb. And this shows how archaeology changes. Shortly after this is published, they had pay dirt. They discovered the tomb of Philip. And so the work began. Now this is the reconstruction of the inside of the martyrium. That's in Limoncelli's book. And notice that now there's no attempt to show a tomb of Philip inside of this. And then around the outside of this is where the pilgrims would stay as they came to Hierapolis. Yeah, I'm sure you recognize these guys. We made a trip over there to get a tour from Professor DeAndrea to see the ongoing excavations that were going on here. And so we got a wonderful tour of the site. And there is the tomb of Philip that was built into the basilica in the 6th century. I don't know of any other basilica like this that has a tomb in Turkey or elsewhere. If somebody knows, I'd be happy to hear about it. And that's what makes this so interesting. You can see the staircase on the left that allowed pilgrims then to actually walk up over the top of the tomb at some point. Here's the reconstruction of what the tomb looked like there once it was incorporated within the church, with the lintel there, allowing access to pilgrims from the church, from the north aisle. Recognize some of those people as well. Pilgrims touching the lintel there over the tomb. No bones in the tomb when the Italians finally unearthed it. Again, we suggest that those relics have been moved to Constantinople. One of the interesting things you don't see here, just to the front and right side of the tomb, it's all been filled in. It was open when we were there, was this extremely deep 2 pits. And there's still a lot of discussion, what exactly are these? Are they baths? Are they some kind of purification ritual places? Are they baptistries? They are unlike any other baptistry that we have in other churches, like in Ephesus or Laodicea. Notice there's no steps down in there. And so you've got the upper pools and then the lower ones. So obviously the pieces of marble then could be lifted out and water moved back and forth. But whether you lowered somebody in there, that's about the only way you can get in these. So the purpose of this, I'm still not totally sure, and I'm not sure the excavators, it's just hypotheses what these were for, but very unique inside the basilica. So this is now the restoration of what the basilica looked like, and you can see toward the back there how the tomb of Philip was incorporated into this basilical church from built in the 6th century that continued on for hundreds of years, and of course rebuilt after earthquake damage until finally it was abandoned. We've got some pilgrims today. Some of you have made the walk up the hill. Definitely worth your time to make the hike there in Hierapolis today. And just mention a couple publications. For those of you who were not aware of it, a revised and updated edition of Biblical Turkey was released last year. Not many people in Turkey to buy it because of the pandemic. So the cover is largely the same with a little bit of different coloration and type, but clearly tells it's updated and revised. And then a brand new publication just out in 2021 on the territory of Hierapolis in Phrygia by Giuseppe Scardozzi. So one of their archaeological guide series, and that is also in Turkish and Italian, if I'm not mistaken. So publications ongoing related to this important site. So we've had a very nice review of this transition from Hierapolis, from a pagan city related to Apollo and Pluto, to that of Philip and becoming a Christian city, and looking at some Jewish tombs along the way. So thank you very much for your attention.